Speak out with Stewy. Speak out with me. Let your voice free. Speak out with Stewy.
I am one of your former students from Garland High School, where you were the speech and debate coach for many, many years. And I was on your team freshman through senior year. So we spent 4 years together, and then all the years after that also.
You were the first to call me school mom. I never heard that before.
Was I?
Yes,
Oh.
you said you're my school mom. And I was like, oh, I like that. That's nice.
Yeah, well,
I felt like I was your school mom because we spent so much time together every other weekend at a tournament, speech and debate tournaments and competitions. So hours and hours of talking.
Yes, so many. Yeah, and so I graduated in 2012. So we met initially in 2008. So
maybe before, because your brother was on the team.
Yeah.
We may have just kind of met
Seen
a little bit. Yeah. You got on as a freshman because he was on varsity. You got to be on varsity. I was like, well, if you're related to Redwan, then you must be amazing.
Yeah, and because Jordan and I were like best friends, and you'd known her forever from your plays.
Yes, the summer musicals. That's right. I forgot about that. That's true.
Yeah, so both of us joined together.
Mm-hmm. And that's how we know each other.
Yeah, and that's how we know each other. So it's been, I hadn't even realized, it's been over a decade.
That's weird. That is super weird, because you don't seem that old to me, and I don't seem that old to me.
Yeah, same.
So one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, first of all, obviously I want to give you a voice, but you were the first person that I met and knew was a Muslim, because you wear a hijab, which I did not know the name of at the time. I was just coming into Garland thinking that I knew a lot about the world and other cultures and other religions, and then became the speech and debate coach and learned that I knew nothing. I knew nothing about the world and other cultures and other religions any more than I had learned on television, movies, and pop culture, which, as we both know, hasn't been the most positive versions of people who are of the Muslim faith and religion. So it was interesting to me because you wore the hijab, so I knew, right? I didn't know your brother was a Muslim. I didn't ask. I started to figure it out when he left every Friday to go pray. I wasn't sure why he was leaving. And then I started, learning more about why he was leaving. And I think as a white person, you're scared to ask questions of adults. You don't just pass someone and say, hey, why are you wearing that scarf on your head? What does it stand for? What does it mean? And what goes along with that? But when it's a student who's 14, you've spent hours and hours and hours together, you just start talking about, well, hey, what is that called? And why do you wear it? And then you just sort of told me your story, and it was so different from what I imagined, the reality.
Yeah.
And what I had been taught or seen. So can you share with us a little bit about your journey and the hijab? And just because so many people want to ask, and yet adults especially, we're so uncomfortable broaching the subject. We don't want to be offensive or seem racist or anything like that. And a lot of people are that way just because they don't know what it means. So I'm giving it over to you, Manar.
For sure. So the hijab is like the Arabic Islamic name for, the head covering, where you're covering your hair. And so I was taught and raised growing up that, like, oh, you start wearing a hijab when you hit puberty, because that means that you're woman, sort of. you're still a child. But it's about modesty. And I'm just trying to think through like a lot of misconceptions about it and that kind of thing. One really important thing to highlight probably is that it is a choice that every Muslim woman can choose to make for herself or not make. There are going to be people, right, like Muslims who say that, no, it's mandatory. But I think a really big thing in Islam as a religion at all is intention and choice. So that it's pretty universally accepted that if you're forced into doing something, then it doesn't really matter. Like your intention has to be there. So if you don't choose it for yourself, there's not much of a purpose in it. Another thing is some people kind of get the idea that like, oh, hair is seen as particularly like sexual and glamorous, and like you have to cover it up specifically because like that's, I don't know, like that's where the sin comes from or something. But it's not that hair is specifically in any way revered. If anything, it's more like a final step. If you are a hijabi, if you are a person who chooses to wear the hijab, then you don't just cover your hair, you also are supposed to cover like your arms and your legs, and wear clothes that aren't like form-fitting and that kind of thing. So it's just part of like the general outfit of modesty. It wouldn't really make sense if you were like covering your hair but walking around in it like a tank top and shorts. That's not a thing that happens.
Okay.
So my mom didn't actually start wearing a hijab until after she was married, which she did get married when she was like 21. So she was still in her early 20s when she started wearing a hijab. But I always grew up seeing her with it. So to me, it was a very normal thing. And, you know, when I was a little girl, I would ask, like, when am I going to do that? And they were just like, when you're like 13, I don't know. And I was like, okay, sure. And then when I got like a little bit older, and I had talked to more people and done some research, I like got it fixed in my head that it's like, oh, okay, I should start wearing hijab like as soon as I get my period, which definitely among American Muslims and definitely among like most of the Muslim women that I know isn't actually like normal. Most people wait till they're a bit older. Um,
So you were
but
pretty young, like
I,
7th grade.
yeah. So I was like 12 and a half, and I remember very specifically like my first ever period. It was like over Thanksgiving, so fall of my 7th grade year, and I was like, all right, I'm ready. And my parents were like, don't just like go to school tomorrow with a hijab on. That's weird. And I was like, okay, I will start wearing it on like the first day of winter break, which was like a month away. And they were like, okay, sure, whatever you want. And so then, you know, first day of like winter break, we're like going out somewhere, and I like very carefully like put on my scarf and all that stuff, and I like come out of my room. My parents look at me and they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, I told you I was gonna start doing it this day. And they were like, are you sure? Like it's like, you know, the middle of the school year. And I mean it was winter break, but like the idea was that I would go back. And also, you know, my mom kind of took me aside and was like, maybe high school would be, you know, a good time to start. And that's what, like, you know, a lot of girls do, but I was very fixated on it. And so I insisted. So like first day of winter break. So I came back 7th grade, like in January, with hijab on. And it was funny because, you know, all of my classmates and teachers got used to it by the end of the school year. And then like yearbooks came out. And of course, my yearbook photo had been taken in the fall. And I just remember everybody looking at it and being like, Manar, you have hair. And I was like, yeah, that was like 3 months ago. Like, yes, I do have hair.
Well, what was the reaction though? Did you have all positive, or was there any confusion or questions or negativity as a 7th grader?
Yeah, so I I think that I was lucky. So I went to Austin Academy, and
It's a school for
um,
gifted children. So you
exactly.
had these students who were very, very smart and can understand
Yeah,
everything
smart and diverse,
and diverse.
and also people who had known me for a really long time. So I think, there's a difference between, especially since it was the middle school year, there's a difference between meeting a person and the first time you meet her, she's wearing a hijab, and then like knowing a person and knowing her as a person, and then seeing her start to just kind of change her clothing slightly. So I was really prepared actually for negative reactions. I was like, I'm going to lose friends over this. I'm going to see who, who really like, cares about me as a person and who doesn't. And I was very blessed not to be my friends, and my teachers luckily just weren't, inappropriate people who were going to treat me differently. Um, I'm sure, I don't remember very clearly, I'm sure that there were plenty of questions, but I think one thing that I didn't, I think like growing up in Garland and going to school in Garland, I didn't actually realize how much of a minority I was until I kind of talked to people in other places. Like, I definitely in my middle school was the only person wearing a hijab for, that semester. And then like the next year there was like one or two other girls. And then the whole time I was in Garland High School, my like 4 years there were maybe like three or four of us total. And so I was very, very used to answering questions and things like that because that seemed normal to me. And um, but then like, I had some friends who were just over in like Plano ISD, which is a lot more, has like a lot larger like Muslim population. And they're all like hanging out, like 20 girls with the jobs. And I was like, oh, like I was the only one for a while. And I didn't like know that that was weird. I was just kind of used to it. So yeah, I was not met with uh, openly negative reactions. I even remember like, um, when you say like, well, no, just like dress code and stuff, they're like, no hats, no head coverings, whatever. And I just remember like one time, literally, like, for some reason, I was in the hallway when the principal was like walking by during an announcement and they said that. And she literally just reached out to tap me and was like, except for you.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
And did it affect you were in theater. So did
Yes.
that affect your casting?
Um, so again, I was just really lucky. I had, you actually know her, Heather Jernigan was
Mm-hmm.
my theater teacher in middle school. And she was just so, like, she did not care at all. She made such a point of telling me, we will work around whatever you need to work around in terms of costuming. And, you can whatever role you want, you tell me like what you're comfortable with, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
we'll do. Um, so it ended up not being a problem there. And I think for me with theater and acting, the issue wasn't really a costume issue so much as like other Muslim stuff, which is that I'm not going to, like kiss a guy on stage or anything like that, because that also violates like our rules of like propriety and modesty, to have any sort of physical relationship, even just like kissing, uh, before marriage, and especially doing it publicly, that's like extra not a thing. So um, in middle school we were like, the plays that we were doing didn't require like any sort of romantic involvement, but it was something I had to consider like moving forward into high school. I was like, well, if I do any plays, I will have to specifically do roles that aren't kind of like I can't try to be the lead in any sort of romantic play, which like lots and lots and lots and lots of media involves, romantic roles.
But you were so successful in speech and debate doing dramatic interp and other types of interp, I know, but dramatic is just what comes to the forefront because
Yeah,
you were
that's what I did mostly.
able to find these amazing memoirs, and you just would have these beautiful 10-minute monologues that would come to life. And usually we tried to choose something that your hijab would accentuate the character's story and voice. And you were very successful, very
Thank
successful
you.
actress.
Speech and debate was really a gift in that way because I did also like debate, and that was cool and fun. But
Yes, you're also extremely smart and did public forum debate, and you were very, very successful at that as well. And extemp.
Thank
And
you.
oratory, I'm sure. I'm going to be interviewing your brother later today
Yes.
about his oratory that really changed my whole life and perspective about what it meant to be a Muslim in America. So we're going to be talking about that later.
Yes.
But yes, speech and debate, you did do everything. You were what we call the hybrid.
Yes, which like I never see anymore. It was kind of rare at the time too.
It was.
But with the acting, that was really lovely because the whole conceit of pretty much all of those events is that you have to play all the characters, or you can't actually interact with another person, or you're specifically not allowed to have costumes. So it's incredibly freeing because I could just be in whatever scene, act out whatever part, and just do it in my my little suit, my pantsuit. Speech and debate pantsuit.
Your uniform was
Yes.
looking like a lawyer. Another thing that I was going to ask you to talk about, and this is another thing I had no idea about, but we're going out to eat dinner after a tournament. Miss Stewart, we can't eat here. There's nothing we can eat here. Okay. And I'm going, what? I don't explain halal. And, that is a thing that is important that we all are aware of. And it's similar to Jewish people in some ways, that you can eat certain things and can't eat certain things. And so help us understand this, Manar, my darling.
So a lot of people are familiar with keeping kosher or eating kosher. So eating halal is similar. Halal itself, the word, is actually just kind of the blanket word for anything that's permissible in Islam, which a lot of people don't know. So we don't just call food halal. We call everything oh, is that halal? Means can I do that? But eating halal specifically, if food is kosher, it is actually also halal for sure. But the reverse isn't true. It's like a square rectangle thing. If food is halal, that doesn't necessarily mean it's kosher, because kosher has more restrictions upon it. There's more rules to follow if you're keeping kosher than if you're keeping halal. So
we probably need to talk to someone who can help us figure that one out on a different video.
Yes, but I can go. Okay. I can do the basics. So for halal food, all seafood is permissible, and then so seafood is always okay, and then pork is never okay. But then for other meats, so like beef, chicken, you can eat it if it has been slaughtered humanely and the blood drained thoroughly, and that a prayer has been said before it was killed. So it was slaughtered in the name of God. And yeah, that's basically it. So most restaurants, right, in America aren't going to be serving halal meat. So for the most part, whenever I go out to eat, I eat vegetarian or pescatarian food. But there are, in the Dallas area and the Austin area, plenty of halal restaurants.
So we did a lot of cheese pizzas. we did a lot of salads and we made it work, and it was
Yeah.
great. And I learned so much. I mean, there's so much more that doesn't define you, the fact that you're a Muslim. There's so much more to you. So I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you feel passionately about right now that you've educated us a little bit? Is there anything that you feel passionately about and that you want to speak about on Speak Out with Stewy today?
Oh man.
I know you feel passionately about a lot of things because I know you very well. And you're a
I
writer,
do.
and you're probably going to write some amazing articles or stories or books in the future,
I
working on
hope so.
some, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I love to write. I'm always working on writing. Right now, in terms of social issues that are on my mind, it's all stuff that's just like timely things, like, Black Lives Matter things, police brutality, that sort of thing has obviously been very on my mind. I don't think I have anything specific that I want to say right now. I kind of feel like I'm just caught in the current of the world right now. Like everything is just flowing. My brain is just like processing a constant stream of news. And I'm like,
Do you feel like things are changing or are going to change?
I do. I think I'm an optimistic person. So I feel like I'm always like, yes, real change is happening. We're making progress. But I don't know, it's been a tough, few years with our president, and now with the pandemic, and we're both in Texas, where infection and death rates are rising every day because people aren't, you know, appropriately staying safe and isolating themselves and wearing masks. I think that there has been like kind of an uptick and a surge of hate crimes. Um, it did like affect my life in ways that I kind of noticed later, like just there's there's this like 24-hour cafe that I used to go to a lot. And I remember at one point it was like there for brunch, and I was like, I used to come here at like 3 in the morning. Why don't I come here at 3 in the morning anymore? Like, have I just gotten older? And then I was like, oh no, after Trump became president, I no longer felt safe like being out at night because, you know, every single time like a Muslim woman is assaulted, my mother sends me the article and is like, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I'm like, yes, I cannot safely, kind of just be out and about without kind of like anticipating or expecting harm.
Manar, that's terrifying. It's making me cry because, I mean, I don't want anyone to hurt you or hate you just because you have a scarf on your head and have a religious belief that is different from theirs. I mean, if you don't wear the scarf, they can't see it, but that's part of who you are, and you should be allowed to express that because that is what you believe.
Yeah, I
Terrifying.
remember. Yeah, I think what's probably more terrifying is how just like not like I think for a lot of minorities, definitely, Black people and other people of color, it's really normalized for us to kind of just like be aware of and anticipatory of that kind of risk of like, oh yeah, you just have to know that there's a possibility that you could be the victim of a hate crime.
Oh
um
my God. I mean, as a woman, I'm terrified all the time,
yeah,
right? And I'm
for
I'm
sure.
always thinking like, no, Menard, don't go to a cafe at 2 in the morning. Don't, because you're a woman.
Yeah,
But now we add on to that being a woman of color, and then you add on to that a hijabi.
yeah,
Am I saying that right?
you're saying it
Am
right.
I allowed to use that word?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, I don't know. I'm checking. I want to ask because if
of
I'm
course.
saying something stupid or offensive, I want to know because I'm sure I have in the past without knowing. But that is terrifying that you're on high alert for a hate crime. How old are you?
26.
26 years old. That is, it's so scary. Please be careful.
Thank you. I am. And yeah, I remember on that subject, after 9/11, there was, of course, a really intense surge of Islamophobia in the United States. And I was a kid. I was like 7, 8. So before I wore a hijab, but like, of course, my mother did.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, she had a really good friend who was like a very nice Christian lady. And she like begged my mom. She was like, please stop wearing that because I'm afraid for you. And like, you'll be safer if you stop wearing it. And I do know people like who did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a student at Garland, and she was not in speech and debate, but she started wearing her hijab as like a junior. So
Mhm.
everyone knew her, and she was beautiful, and she had very thick, long hair that did call attention, because it was so beautiful. And then someone told me she was having a rough time, and then I introduced her to, I think, Amani and Hanan, and said, you need some support, you need some backup, because when I talked to her the first time, she just burst into tears, and she said, people that I've known my whole life are now not talking to me.
Oh my goodness.
They will not be my friend anymore. And this wasn't that long ago. We're talking like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was so hard for her, so difficult, because she kind of had this whole persona for 2 years. She may
Yeah.
have been a sophomore when she changed, but needless to say, it was a huge shift. Although the high school is another, an
Yeah.
extension of the middle school with these very smart kids, you still have a lot of different people with a lot of prejudices and stereotypes, and she struggled.
When I was in middle school in 7th grade wearing it, I had a classmate who she started wearing a hijab, and then a few months later she stopped. And I was just kind of, like, not in a judgmental way. I was just kind of like, what happened? And she was like, oh, people were bullying me. And I was like, oh, that hasn't happened to me. I'm sorry. And she was like, yeah, well, you're more popular than I am. And I was like, oh, goodness. I mean, the thing is, though, that like,
Yeah.
while I don't want, I clearly and consciously don't want other people to be having opinions on my hair. I too am very attached to my hair. Like, like
I
I
finally
do.
saw your hair. I did get to see your hair. Women can see your hair.
Yes.
When we spent the night at tournaments, and
yes, the rules for the hijab are you're supposed to wear it around men who are not like blood relatives, and then like, your husband, obviously, you can.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even think about it now, but when I first met you, it was sort of all I thought about it, and I was obsessed about learning and figuring it out. But now I realize that, that's not the person I want to be, someone who judges people by their appearance or hair, for that matter, right?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you have had several other hijabi students after me as well.
I
So
have. That's
gotten-
true. You said, hey, it's a safe space here. Come on, everybody. You can be yourself, right? You can find your safe place in high school, whether it's speech and debate or theater or something else. You were in spelling and vocab. Hello, you went to state, I think,
Yeah.
every single year. So it wasn't like you were just in speech and debate. You were in everything. You were in act deck. You were, oh my gosh, you were popular.
Apparently. I was a popular nerd.
You were.
I was the nerd version of popular.
Well, as you know, we can speak for hours and hours on the phone or in person, but I will wrap up this particular conversation, and maybe we can come back and have a part 2 with Manar, because you have such an amazing voice and you've educated me on so many things. And I just feel really blessed to have been a little part of your journey and to continue,
Yeah.
continue being a part of your journey.
Well, thank you.
So
You were a huge part. So,
do you, just out of curiosity, do you remember any stories from my life that particularly stuck with you over the years? I'm just curious.
stories from your, I mean,
Yes,
I
because you know my whole life story.
I do. I mean, I'm having a recency bias thing where I'm just thinking about you finding your dad after all this time and everything, because that was a relatively recent thing.
For sure.
And I saw you post on Father's Day, which just happened. So
I have a dad.
you do, and siblings,
And
like
siblings.
so
I was raised
many.
an only child.
Yeah.
It's exciting. Yeah.
So that story, and then of course I read your books when they came out. So all of those stories.
That drama.
That drama.
Anyway, I need you to be my editor. I didn't really have editors. So my next book, you'll be my editor and I'll pay
I would
you.
love to.
Yeah.
I would
Okay, well,
love to.
I love you and I will talk to you soon.
I love you too. Thank you.
Okay, bye. I'll send this video to you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Speak out with Stewy. Speak out with Stewy. Speak out with me. Let your voice free. Speak out with Stewy. Speak out with Stewy. Oh. Let your voice ring and we will sing. Speak out with Stewy. Speak out with Stewy. Together we're in harmony. Speak out with Stewy. Speak out.